But it's very unusual for someone's day job in the metal scene to be an engineer for NASA. How does that work with the metal band as well?
And I'm not gonna lie, it's really hard. I just joke with people. I work two full-time jobs, one that makes me money and the other one that takes it. I typically tend to go 100% all the time, but that leaves no room for building or any climax or anything like that in the song. And that's my problem with a lot of metalcore in general, is it's just the whole way. I try to save a lot of like the 100% belty stuff for when it's called out in the song, either lyrically or musically. I listen back to some of those one takes and I still go, I wish I would have done that differently or that differently. But I'm a human being and I'm not perfect. And that's the beauty of one takes. It's the emotional gore. It's part of the vision. It's part of being real.
This interview is a bit special. Normally, when I'm interviewing artists in the musical dimension, they've had a few albums out, material to kind of look at. This particular band is so new, there are only 2 singles out at the time of this conversation. Yet they are super interesting. The quality of the songwriting and the musicianship and the vocals and the production and the visuals is such a high level that I'm fascinated to know more about this new band that is called Gore. And I'm delighted to have the chance to chat today with Haley Roughton, the vocalist of Gore. So welcome, Haley. And to begin with, how has this band come to be? Because it doesn't sound like a few mates in their bedroom just playing around with some music. It sounds like this has been worked on over the years and experience gained and honed as a craft. And now we have this complete band. So how has this all come to pass?
Well, first, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So the background's actually pretty interesting compared to what a lot of people think. So I started off in a symphonic death metal band. That was my very first band ever. So a very different genre than what I'm doing now. When I left that band, I decided that I really just wanted to do a lot more singing. I never had really done singing in a band prior, with the exception of like maybe a couple cover band shows with my friends just to make some money. So I was living in Arizona at the time, and actually,
What was this, by the way? Sorry. This
oh
other
yeah,
band.
this was January of last year is the
Okay.
fruition of this band. So it's very, very recent, you know. So I went to a studio in St. Louis with some good friends of mine, Caleb Freihout and Benjamin McGinnis. And we cooked up this EP, and I knew immediately that I wanted to bring on some people that I knew and trusted. And that's when Alex and Devin came along. So, we're kind of from all over the place. Alex is from Houston. I'm actually living in Austin, Texas right now. Devin's from Michigan. So yeah, very recent.
Right. And very, I was going to say international, but I guess interstate as,
Yeah.
as a thing, which in terms of, I mean, I'm immediately thinking songwriting is difficult. Rehearsing is going to be a serious overhead in terms of cost. How have the songwriting processes been thus far for this with that kind of cross-state setup?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the first EP is a different nature. So the other 2 members weren't involved in the writing of the first EP. It was just me, Ben, and Caleb. Of course, you know, when we play live, they'll put their own sparkle on it, for lack of a better term. They probably wouldn't want me to use that term, but, you know, this is Gore. It's death would make it pretty, so I'm using sparkle.
Okay.
And so during that time, it was really just us 3 making the EP. For our next round of songs, which we've already started on, we all fly to St. Louis and work with these same guys, and we all write together. It's a boot camp of sorts. You know, we're there for 2 weeks at a time, writing, doing nothing else, working 12-hour days. But to me, the priority of having people that I know and trust is more important than convenience for a band. So
I can understand that. Certainly when you're trying to create something of the quality that you're kind of going for, that's first and foremost. The rest are details you can figure out later on, right?
yeah.
I really enjoyed what you said there about death, but make it pretty. Is that something like the North Star of this band and what it's aiming to be?
So that actually, I did not come up with that because I I had, when I very first started this band, I already knew what my vision was going to be. I had this very clear vision of what Gore was going to look like. And the way I feel about it, the way that I feel about Gore and what it represents is femininity, not just women, but the idea of femininity in general is still used very sparingly in the metal scene. Like you'll see women in metal, but it's still a very masculine presence and it's built for kind of the male gaze. And so I wanted to make something that creates a narrative of, oh, femininity is just not this like random commodity in metal. It's actually, you'll see all these incredible bands using femininity because I think that, for example, a lot of bands are scared to use the color pink, which is wild to me. It's like the best color ever. So I really wanted to include that femininity and juxtapose with some disturbing imagery like barbed wires and sludge and stuff like that.
I see. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's not quite metal, but a Beartooth in their most recent record, which I've loved, is like a bright pink. He's like, this is a whole new thing. Why not? It's strong. It's punchy.
Yeah.
And yeah, you make an interesting point. So it's interesting that that's so, I guess, ingrained within the visuals as well, is kind of how you're talking about. It's not just sonically with the whole range being possible in there, but the visuals, pink and the rest. Cool. So it's very much a concept that you wanted to deliver. At what point did that start to form in your mind as something to build?
Once for the first EP, we haven't officially announced that we're releasing an EP, but if you look like hard enough for like 5 minutes on our Spotify, we're releasing an EP.
Right. Yeah, you keep saying the first EP. I'm like, you mean the one that's coming out in stages with the singles now, right? Okay.
Yes, the first EP is projected to come out in 2024, which is this year. So expect an EP this year. So I'm sorry, what was your question?
When did the sort of concept form that was this something you wanted to deliver as its whole visual package as well?
Yeah. So once the songs started coming together, to me, that painted a picture in my head of what the band was going to sound like. I also love R&B. Like I listen to R&B more than I listen to metal. And one of my favorite artists in R&B, Lucky Day, he actually has a color palette that's pretty similar. It's got the purples and pinks on one of his earlier albums. And, that was a very big inspiration to me at the time. So you'll kind of see that similarity there.
Cool. I am so fascinated by the name as well. It seems like there's given you're this thoughtful about the levels of visualization, etc. The name must not just be a throwaway thing. The name is Gore with a full stop or period at the end. Now, Gore is like a hard word. It's metal as fuck. And there's moments of absolute delicacy within the songs as well. And there's a hard stop with a period at the end. Where does the name come from? What does that signify to you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of layers to the choice of that name. So the Gore of us is emotional gore in the sense. It's not like, when I think of Gore in the context of this band, I don't think like Terrifier, even though it's a great movie. I think emotional gore, so raw, exposed. Okay. And you'll hear that in our songs. They're incredibly emotional and they're very, the lyrics are very impactful. We don't shy away from anything really. So that's one layer of it. The other layer is part of the juxtaposition of the image that I'm trying to create. So you do have a lot of beauty and delicacy, pink flowers and crystalline and stuff like that, built with disturbing imagery, sludge, barbed wire, whatnot. And so for me, Gore kind of encompasses the vision in every aspect, not to mention the one word band name thing, that was kind of me putting my own stamp on this band, because the last band I was in had a very complex name and I was just like, this is mine, and I'm being very loud about it,
Nice. Punchy.
Yes.
Yeah, and it does, certainly if you've not heard the music yet and you're like, oh, I'm listening to this band called Gore, it's going to conjure up, potentially images like, well, that's pretty hardcore. And then I put it on today for my wife and she's like, oh, that's like a lovely voice. Like, wasn't expecting that based on the band names. So it's kind of an exciting way to surprise people, I suppose, as well. Yeah. Have you found when you're playing it to your mates or the rest that they're surprised by the sound that comes out from the record, or is everyone kind of like, oh yeah, no, that's to be expected from what you've done previously?
No, I think so. I've always known how to sing or do cleans, as the metal community calls it. But I struggled a lot with it when I was starting out in a metal band because I would just do it for fun. I did it in high school, like choir. So I think a lot of people weren't expecting me, I think, to have as strong of a singing voice as I do now. But I've worked really, really hard in the last couple of years. I've really only started seriously practicing my craft in about 2020. So.
Right. Yeah, that was a question I had for this, because it does sound like a very practiced skill. Either you just have won the vocal jackpot and you happen to have very, very strong delivery in all the edges, or it's something you've spent years of tuition to really hone. It sounds like a bit of both. I guess you've been in choir a long time ago. Those were the startings of some techniques, but you're saying more recently you've honed that. What's led to that being more recent thing that you focused on trying to, I guess, improve it beyond what it already was?
I think being asked to join a band, when somebody puts their trust in me to execute, I will do my best to not let somebody down. And I'm the kind of person where if I decide I'm going to do something, I will do it. And I will do it. I will just run it to the ground. You know, I will always be, I used to practice death metal vocals every single day. And then I started, practicing singing more. And so I have seen a lot of progress very quickly because I naturally have the ability to sing, but it wasn't always like great. It was like, oh, she can sing,
Okay. Well, it's a good starting point, to be fair.
Yeah.
There's such variety in the vocal delivery that you have in the, even if there's the two songs we've heard so far. Like, obviously there's strong belting, there's kind of delicate breathiness, and there's the scream vocals, and sometimes there's whispers. It's such a range. How do you decide which of those vocal levers you're going to pull in a certain part of the song? Is it according to lyrics or something else? Or how do you know which, what's your feeling about the expression choices?
So that's a good question. It comes from not just me. I think that's the important thing is I look toward my bandmates and my co-writer and my producer to see what emotion they're seeking out during that song as well. But in general, which I've gotten a lot better about, but I typically tend to go 100% all the time, but that leaves no room for building or any climax or anything like that in the song. That's my problem with a lot of metalcore in general, is it's just the whole way. So really, in general, I try to save a lot of like the 100% belty stuff for when it's called out in the song, either lyrically or musically.
Sure. I can see that playing out in the songs as well. Like the kind of crescendo moments, because Doomsday is the one I thought of immediately, because that's quite a journey sonically. Starts off very delicate and almost, I don't know if this is an actual influence or not, but it reminded me of, and I couldn't think of it at the time when I first heard it, but the pace of it and the guitar sound, I thought of like a Green Day ballad. It was like a 21 Guns sort of a thing. And then, there's obviously, it allows the lyrics to cut through when you have the kind of delicacy and the space for that. But the punch of the vocal belting later on, especially the final note, I'd really like to know a bit more about, because you hit, for when you're singing the word Doomsday, you hit a very strong, like perfect note. And I don't know whether there's a bit of, tuning refinement on that, but you then go into a sort of a vibrato, which if you did have auto tune on it, it's going to be chasing up and down to try and find that out. How many times did you do that last vocal to get the sound you wanted? And what kind of effects did you consciously go for? And how much of that is accident?
Yeah, so that's really funny that you mentioned that, because so my biggest, I think, vocal inspiration is the band Nothing But Thieves, which is actually a rock band. They're not really metal.
Yeah, I know that.
But Connor Mason is one of my favorite singers of all time. And so I've started to find myself singing a bit like that. And I've always been a big vibrato gal. Actually, sometimes I've been told that I need to cut back, because I was in choir, but always been, and I was in theater too as a kid. So vibrato was always a thing that I knew how to do. That's nothing, when it comes to styles like that, I don't need any help studio wise, tuning refinement, that kind of thing. So yeah, that note is just me feeling whatever I'm feeling in that moment. And I was like, this is how the song has to end. And everybody was really surprised by it because you just don't hear that in metalcore, like ever. And you'll hear more when the rest of the EP is released, but there's some things like vocal styles that we do that, Caleb, my co-writer was kind of like, man, this is going to be very different from what people are used to hearing, like some of that R&B grit, which I don't claim to be as good as any R&B singer because, wow. People are like, wow, you can do like runs. It's really cool. I'm like, these are like beginner for R&B people. But, yeah. So that's where that came from. That just came from a culmination of inspirations.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. I mean, you're being slightly humble there, I think, in terms of the ability compared to R&B artists, but I understand your point there.
Yeah.
Equally, another moment that stood out to me was this in the song Pray. The vocal delivery in the first two choruses are similar. The third one, there's a slight difference that I noticed. And you could, I guess the lazy thing to do would be like copy and paste the vocal stem to the next chorus. They're the exact same. But the last chorus of that, there's a slight edge or distortion, a very slight one on like the kind of belted note you go for. Is each of the choruses, clearly that one's a different take, but are each of the choruses their own vocal recording? Or is that one in particular, like I have a different way I want to add more power to it in the very end?
There are some songs where the choruses are copy and pasted, and that's important for continuity for a final just master in general.
Sure.
And something that you'll hear a lot in Gore is down choruses. And that's, so a chorus that's it's quieter, so it's building. Doomsday is a great example. First
Right.
chorus is the down chorus. It's not the same as all the other ones. But in general, it's kind of just a rule of thumb thing where if I feel like I need to emote something different, then I'll do it again. And I'll do it differently. We have a song coming out in the next, couple of months where it's the same thing. It's there's like 2 or 3 choruses that are the exact same, but then, I do it a bit differently just to give the right amount of emotion. Because for Pray, there's a lot going on vocally that there's a lot of instrumentation, a lot of reverb and stuff, so it fits really well. But I wanted to make sure that all of that was being heard in that little tiny space. Gosh,
it's a lot to try and nail. Like because you seem to have a bit of a, I don't know, I have no idea. Do you have a bit of like a perfectionism streak within you? And because those are such fine details to be focusing on, because again, that difference in that third chorus of Pray vocally is small. It's like just a little bit of extra power to it. Do you find that difficult when you're putting something together in recordings to deal with like, okay, now it's good enough, it's done, I'm happy? Or is that something you're learning to do?
My producer and my bandmates are going to listen to this question and laugh because, yeah, I am like really perfectionist. And to the point where sometimes I'll see really negative comments online and I'll believe them, even though if it were anybody else that was having those comments, I'd be like, yeah, you're not going to make everybody happy. These people are miserable, that are saying these things just, but sometimes, I'll look at the comments and I'll be like, man, they're right. I suck, typical musician shit. So.
Yeah, I can relate. And even though I can relate, and even though I would say to anyone else, yeah, don't worry about them. Like they're the tiny minority, who cares? And yet I can't give myself the same advice. You know?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Easy to say.
Talking about online comments and the rest, we're in a world now in 2024 that promoting a band is a whole different thing. Like it really, the way that you I guess, represent yourselves online using shorts, videos, and the one-take vocals and the rest. How much of that is naturally what you'd like to do anyway, and how much of that is something that it is challenging to do because maybe that's not your main focus of the band and the music?
Yeah. So I'm glad that I do the social media stuff because I like connecting with our fans. Our actual fan base so far, especially on like YouTube and Instagram, man, they're so absolutely encouraging. Some of the nicest things I've ever heard in my life have been from this project and some of our fans. I will say, if I could do it a bit less and still give this band the push that it deserves, I would. I'm not a huge fan of the new way to market bands, is, you know, having to push every day, because sometimes it can feel inorganic. At the same time, I am a very hardworking person and I have no problem doing it, you know, just from, you know, being in college and getting an engineering degree, like the grind, I understand what that is. I do it for the fans that we currently have and the ones that haven't heard us yet. But it is funny because I'll get, you know, when Pray first came out, I would get comments like, quit. Why are you always posting the same song? And I'm like, dude,
what?
I wish I wasn't always posting the same song. This is the world we live in. I have to make sure people hear Pray, you know, and this is our only song. So,
I mean, my feedback was that actually, I think you've done a very good job of having multiple videos essentially linked in the same single, but they are different in what seems like a very authentic way. It doesn't feel like it's overdone. So every video has its own reason to exist on its own as well. And actually, if someone's saying, "Oh, I've already heard this," like, great, then the comms are working. Then, you know, you've heard multiple things. Fantastic. No, I think honestly, from my perspective, I think it's a good balance, because you're right. You have to have that thing of someone's watching this who knows this already. Most people are not going to, right? Especially if you're a new band kind of rising up. So you're doing grand. Keep doing
Thank
what you're
you.
doing.
That means a lot.
Yeah, great. And the one take vocals, how? I mean, I'm interested in those because they're kind of daunting in theory, because one take, there are so many opportunities to do something, especially if you are a bit of a perfectionist. There's so many opportunities to go like, "Oh, I didn't quite want to do it like that. Let me restart again." And yet it is a great mechanism for showcasing this is not something that has been produced to death. This is something I can do in one go. What was your mindset in going towards recording one of those and putting it out there?
So, in general, I just love doing them. Like, that's how I practice. I will go through an entire song, record it, and then listen back, because like many other singers, I am victim of thinking that I sound lovely, because you literally have a different sonic cavity. So you hear yourself differently when you sing than how everybody else hears it. And then you hear it and you're like, I actually don't like how I said that. Like, word placement. I don't like how I said the, or I don't like how I said Doomsday or whatever. So not only is it practice, but I do think it's a bit more relatable. The fans, like, our YouTube loves the one takes. So partially another reason why I do them is just because we got such like beautiful feedback from our fans. It's like, of course I'll do this again. And you know, I listen back to some of those one takes and I still go, I wish I would have done that differently or that differently. But I'm a human being and I'm not perfect. And that's the beauty of one takes. It's the emotional gore. It's part of the vision. It's part of being real. And I'll tell you, I mean, even doing one takes, I still get, oh, well, I'd like to hear just raw iPhone recording. I want to hear you do the whole song. People hate women that are good at what they do in the metal industry, from what I've experienced so far. Like, I've had a guy that's like, I want you to record it with your iPhone. I'm like, nobody's going to want to listen to that. I'm not doing it.
But also, they're not really invited to the process of figuring out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. That's not, you're putting out your own art form in whatever way you choose.
Yes.
That's madness.
And I'd prefer to not record it with a potato. I'd like it to sound pretty.
Yeah. Excuse me while I try and do my best over here. Yes. And it does, there's different aspects to it when it's live. It's never going to be exactly the same as the recording. And then sometimes there's kind of magic there. There was a moment in the Doomsday one take where you do the harsh vocal of like, we're sick, we're sick. The second we're sick is so fucking sick. Like, then now in my head, I'm like, oh, I wish that was on the original recording. Like, there's some fire to that. Is that something? I guess as well, if you do something live many times, you're going to change it slightly for your own. How did that second we're sick come out, or how did you feel about that, or is that just something you kind of breeze through? Like, sometimes it's like this, sometimes it isn't.
Yeah, it literally, some of the best stuff I've ever done comes from not thinking about it. And because I came from a death metal background, I don't get nervous whenever I scream. I'm like, I've done this all the time, but I typically am way more intentional when I sing. And so I think some of that, like, I don't give a fuck about this particular moment in time comes out in my screams quite regularly. And Doomsday, that one's so fun to scream. And normally that part is, you know, in the recording, I'm singing like we're sick. And then that little like we're sick is dubbed over it. But I was like, you know, I'm just going to try to hit it all in once. I'm going to try to do it all.
So cool. Yeah, it absolutely slammed me. It was very, very cool. I was wondering what were the original influences for you in terms of the metal universe? Because I don't know that anyone that comes across metal accidentally. Usually someone introduces them to it because it's not on like mainstream radio and the rest. What was your origin story into metal yourself?
I feel like I have like a first origin story and then like a resurgence. So my dad is super into, or was super into new metal. So Rage Against the Machine, System of a Down. I grew up listening to Foo Fighters, which I know they're rock, but they have crazy metal influence and they're just a really good band.
100%.
Yeah. So like, The Shape and Color, like that album, there's a lot of screams in that album actually. And that was the first
also,
time
the song Breakout is metal as fuck.
So sick.
Like,
God, I love Dave Grohl. But you know, he would take me to like Rise Against concerts. He took me to see Foo Fighters and Serj Tankian and Against Me. That's when I found the band Against Me, who ended up being one of my favorite bands as a kid. So my dad was a huge influence on that. And then I kind of stopped listening to metal in general when I was a younger adult and started getting into a lot of indie, like Manchester Orchestra, kind of like rock, alternative, indie kind of stuff. And then when I came back into the metal world, it was gent, prog. I was never a great guitar player, but I was obsessed with like Paul Gilbert as a kid. I just thought that it was so cool that you could play the guitar that way. Like it was just amazing to me. And so I really latched on to the gent and prog work because it's so instrumentally heavy. And I remember hearing I, the Creator by Monuments for the first time. And I was like,
oh yeah. Yeah, that's a fucking banger.
Yeah. So those are kind of like my influences. For a while there, I didn't even really listen to much metal. And then I kind of came back.
Right. Because I'm hearing influences in the music behind Gore that, you know, obviously there's Deftones, there's some Sleep Token, some greatness in there. And it sounds like this is very much your project, but you're working with a couple of people to kind of write. How much of that sound have you influenced from your own interest, or no, from the Deftones world or Sleep Token? How much that's brought by guitarists and producers? Where are those influences manifested in the Gore sound?
So, you know, I don't write guitar. So I would say when it comes to some of this, like more one-off influences that I mentioned, like Nothing But Thieves, you know, that comes sonically through how I sing. And even some of the lyrics too. But luckily, you know, my producers, they are also very into Deftones and kind of that 90s alternative. Like I remember us sitting in the studio and we were just like listening to Goo Goo Dolls for like a solid 30 minutes before we got into it, ADHD stuff. But that I do purposefully and intentionally work with people that do have similar inspirations, but not like a one for one.
That makes some sense, of course. And also, I was interviewing a guy like last week called Jamie Lenman, who was a singer in a band called Reuben. Not massively known necessarily in the States, but in the UK, it was a big deal in the scene. And he made the point that his music's quite varied. It's like, well, everyone listens to lots of different. No one listens to just metalcore all day. So why are we writing music that is just one specific genre for every song again and again? Whereas if you draw in from R&B and from, Goo Goo Dolls and Foo Fighters, you're going to create something new and original, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to hear another like metalcore song. You know, like I know a lot of people are really into that, but I want to hear something that's different that stands out. And I mean, you can say the same for any genre, really. So,
yeah, it's a funny one, especially when bands progress over the years with new albums and the rest. You'll have a certain percentage of the fandom is like, I just want you to copy and paste your sound for every album, one after another. But the majority are like, no, develop, give us something new. It's perfectly acceptable and understandable. And otherwise, you're just going to be bored, I would say. Yeah. Certainly as an artist, you'd be bored. I wonder if you have, at this point, any kind of a direction musically or an arc or something you want to head in future with the band Gore, or is it very much what I'm feeling right now, I'll write and try and absorb and put out, not thinking long-term arcs musically?
Yeah, I'm intentionally not thinking about how our sound develops, because I don't want, whenever that happens, I think we put ourselves in a box pretty easily. When you have the same people collaborating and writing on a project, it is more or less like you'll be able to tell its score, but my intention is it a good song? If it's a good song, hell, if we get a little bit of country stuff in there, which I'm kidding. We don't actually have any country yet. But
I would be here for it. I like a bit of Nickelback and country rock. I'm in.
Yeah, it's the important piece is it a good song that people can connect to? Like the songs that we just got out of the studio writing that aren't going to be on the first EP. I think those will surprise some people. And you're always going to have people that just don't connect in the same way. And then you're going to have people that kind of follow you along for the rest of your journey. So.
And all is fine. All options are all right.
Yeah.
You know, if a band goes in a direction that's not for you, that's fine. The records you still liked still exist. You can still listen to those. And the band might release something in the future, far future, that you like again. You come back. Like, people get very feisty about things that just don't really matter. Like, let the artist do what they want to do.
Yep.
Well, that's very reassuring to hear. Something else that was of real interest to me is it's very normal, of course, for people in the music world, especially in the alternative rock world, because it is a smaller scene as it was, and financially it's very difficult to have day jobs. But it's very unusual for someone's day job in the metal scene to be an engineer for NASA. That's not something that would happen by accident. That's something that would, you have to learn some very serious, detailed concepts, be very technically minded over the years. So I have to assume that would be something you need to focus on almost as a mirrored passion to what you might have for music. What's been the journey in your engineering world, and how does that work in the current era with the metal band as well?
Yeah, so I went to Texas Christian University for engineering. I actually wasn't really doing all that well. I was on the mechanical side, and I was like, man, I suck at this. But my advisor was begging me to not leave. She's like, just try electrical. And everybody in the engineering college was like, electrical is harder. It's way harder. Nobody ever does well. And then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll try it out. And I did. I was like the first or second best in my class. Like, it just clicked with me. So I stuck with engineering. And then our kind of like admin person, Teresa, she sent out an email about NASA hiring interns. And, I was like, I'm not going to get this, but why would I not sign up anyway? And then all of a sudden, fast forward a few months, and I'm getting the internship. I'm telling my mom, and she's like burning her hair off with a curling iron, because she's just like, and just forgets to take it out of her hair.
Did you say NASA?
Yeah, I was like, Mom, I got it. And she's like, I remember that very day and just being, oh my God, just out of, like, no pun intended, out of this world happy. Like the happiest I've ever been.
When was that, when that call came through?
26, either late 2015 or early 2016. So I actually left college for a year, took college off for a year to go intern there. And I ended up getting hired on full time once I was done with my degree. And as like I said, when I do something, I make sure that I do it the best I can. I didn't do anything else but school when I was in school. I didn't party. I didn't work on music. I didn't do anything but like study, really. And one of my proudest accomplishments is graduating summa cum laude from TCU. And then, I got the job, and that was my priority for a very long time. And it still very much is, right? But it was one of those things where I didn't even want to do anything else. I kind of wanted my work to be my life for a while. And once I finally got comfortable, like, hey, Haley, you're safe here. You can be a human being now. I started to pick up music again. And I think I got more and more obsessed with it. And now I'm at where I am now. And I'm not going to lie, it's really hard. My job is still my priority. Like, NASA's still my priority. And so it's very hard to juggle them both. But I do, like, I just joke with people. I work 2 full-time jobs, one that makes me money and the other one that takes it.
Oh my God. I relate so hard to so much of that. Even from the engineer, I have a degree in electronic engineering. I went to university to do that, to try and meet people who are musicians to be in bands with. I wanted to be a rock star. That was just like, I'll just do that because it's great. And it's fucking hard. Like, maths comes somewhat easily to me, but even then, you can't like go out clubbing and the next day do 9 a.m. labs and nail it. It's kind of impossible. It's not a degree where, in the final exam is just like an essay. You can just kind of fake it. You either know the stuff, you get the right answer, or you don't. And
it's not memorization. It's like, applying concepts, which is a whole other thing. Yeah.
Yes. If you understand it, you don't have to memorize it because you understand it. It's a whole different thing.
Because I have a terrible memory, so.
So we get some lyric prompters on your stage, you'd be all right.
Oh my God. I mess up my own lyrics. Like, I mess up lyrics all the time. Like, I did a Sleep Token cover and somebody's like, of course, like all the Sleep Token,
oh yeah, they're pretty keen. They're pretty keen on the detail.
You got the lyrics wrong. I'm like, guys, I always get lyrics wrong. It's nothing personal.
It means it's authentically me. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. After I got to my late 20s of touring around the UK and Europe in rock bands, and then eventually it's like, this is just taking money, as you said. Like, I can't sustain this. And then I focused on engineering as a software engineer for a few years. And I stopped doing music, really, because I had to focus entirely on that. And now that I'm more at ease with that world, I have space now to do a lot more of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Great.
And that kind of brings me to another thing that I think it's important for people to know. With me doing NASA and this, I've had to make a ton of sacrifices. Like, I'm able to do both with help, obviously. Like, we have great management. Gore has like the best management team ever. But it doesn't come without sacrifice. Like, I always wanted to be a mom. I'm putting that aside, dating, making new friends, seeing my current friends. Like, there's a ton of sacrifices that come with the choices that I've made to do both and make both my priority. But so far it's been more than worth it. So
that's great to hear, especially, and I'm seeing that from my perspective. I'm just looking at comments and views and things and how your songs are doing. The reception seems to be overwhelmingly positive. I haven't heard a single person yet who's listened to it and be like, everyone that in my Discord server and YouTube, the rest has been really raptured by this new sound that come out with. What does it feel like from inside, getting the reception that you're getting from this new project as it's going out?
Honestly, really eye-opening. I think up until maybe a year ago, I thought that I was never good enough to be a musician. I thought that it was always just going to be this pipe dream. And wow. It's really wild to see even people that I look up to personally reaching out to us and being like, you guys are incredible. I mean, that's just it's like beyond validating, it's it makes me want to work even harder. And especially, I think the biggest impact is when I have people that like cry when they hear our songs. Like, I take music very intensely. Like I think everybody can say that, but to a point where like I'll hear certain songs and I'll just start crying every time I hear them. Nutshell by Alice in Chains is a great example. Don't want to listen to that song if I'm, trying to just exist.
I don't know that one. I'm going to have a listen to that.
Yeah, God, makes me cry every time.
Mine is Euclid by Sleep Token. I'm a baby for that one.
Just run it back and me fall time.
Yeah, it's too much. Because I don't know if you're aware of the channel up. I react to and review metal music predominantly. And that's the only time I've ever cried on camera, and I hated it. I was like, no, I must like analyze. It was, but it just got me. It was the end of that album, and it all just built up to that point, and I was broke.
How he brings it back from like the night does not belong to God.
Right? That's when it happened. Then I was like, fuck you. How dare you?
Yes, yeah. I'm a huge Sleep Token fan. Wow, shocker. I get it.
Yeah, and what's great is, and I'm hearing you kind of say this clearly as well, but they're bringing some of that, it's not like girl bands, it's femininity within music, authentically having depth and layers lyrically and sonically, and everyone totally relates to it. Shocker. No one's putting up a front of like, oh, this is just how we feel publicly. Yeah. Go, oh, I feel that. Like, I can't tell you how many men message me going like, I get emotional listening to Sleep Token. I never get emotional, but this band draws it out of me. And I think it's that edge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For you, in terms of the song Doomsday, I'd love to know more where the inspiration to have that content lyrically of that song, because it is, the gut punch is immediate.
Yes.
With like looking out the window, the cops, the kids and stuff. It's just like, oh my God. As soon as that started, I was kind of like, oh, I loved Prey. Let's have another great like banger song. It's like, I'm in for this. Could you tell me more about that song and why you decided that's something you wanted to talk about?
Yes. So that song in general, and I've talked about this before, but just to reiterate, that song's about being desensitized. As a society, we see everything all the time on the internet. And so now we've gotten to a point where I'll see statistics of people that have been murdered. And when I was a child, that would very much affect me when I was first, having Instagram and stuff. But now I just see it. I'm just like, oh, it's just another piece of news. And I think that's a huge problem, Yes. And it's funny because when we were writing the song, and that's how organic and authentic that song is. We never worried about those lyrics or anything like that when we were writing it. We're like, oh, this is great. And then I started having people that I work with being like, are you sure you don't want to like come out before that song comes out and like warn people or tell in a way to try to like explain to them. And we kind of took the punk approach, like kind of fuck you. Like if you have a problem with this is art and this is how I've decided to show it.
Yeah, because if you do come out and say, like, by the way, this might have some content that might be distressing, the risk is people then go, oh, well, then I won't listen to it. And then no one thinks about the horrors that we're just essentially blindly sleepwalking towards because we're kind of putting ourselves in little safe bubbles and go, oh, I don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. It's punk as fuck, but it's important. Like what? I don't understand a society in which we wouldn't be like, just, you have to look at this. There's no trigger warning for this. You have to look at this, please. Well, otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Man, that's intense. I imagine that's got the most emotional responses from folks that are listening to that. Is that the case of the two songs?
Absolutely. Like, it's funny because with Prey, it's just an ass beater, like it's hard. Like, I don't think that, it's not as much of a extreme as far as responses go. But for Prey, I mean, we've had people that are like, I have been emotionally connected to a song like this in a really long time, and I like it more than Prey. And then I see comments that are like, this doesn't do it for me at all. And that's the risk that you have to take, though, because the last thing I want to do is put out another Prey right after we just released Prey. Like, that's not going to do anything for a new band, So I think it was, the right move. And we're kind of showing this band is pretty multifaceted in our sound. I know all bands say that, but I really do mean it. You're going to get even more different stuff just on this EP than Prey and Doomsday. And some people are going to hate it and some people are going to love it.
But that's the point, surely. Like, if every song gets the response of, yeah, it's decent, then what is the point? Like, if you're doing something that some people love and some people are like, it's not for me, then you're probably doing something worthwhile. Certainly when it comes to art, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pay my bills being decent as a musician or get signed to a label being decent. Like, it's going to take, I remember, what's a good example? I remember back in the day, the Gent days where like Polyphia was changing their sound and people were so mad, so angry, and look at them now,
Oh yeah, there's so many examples of that. I mean, Bring Me the Horizon or another one who
Yep.
constantly push and change their sound. And as a fan, even I feel a little bit going like, oh, I don't know about this change. But then give me a couple months, I'm like, this is the best shit I've ever heard. Like sometimes the change is scary, but you don't know that that's the shit yet. It takes a bit of time, and you're not going to get there if you're doing same, safe, but good, well polished, well written stuff. But if it's just kind of, all right, it's not going to get that effect with people.
I mean, Steve Jobs said it perfectly. Like, a lot of people don't know what they want. Like, you have to give the people what they will eventually want, not what they want right now. Like, a lot of people will hate what you're giving them right now, and then they'll realize that, it's actually what they needed.
Yeah. Well, thank you later. Yeah, you hinted at it there, but it must be so difficult when it is a project that no one's heard yet. You're just releasing this to decide what is the first song we put out there? What is the second song? How many songs are on the EP that's coming out?
5.
Okay, great. I'm so excited to hear more. What? I don't know what the other 3 songs are like, but what led to Prey being the first one? And then you alluded that Doomsday was to show, I guess, more a different color scope of song and depth and the rest. But what decided those 2 in that order?
That was more of a business decision, I think. I think we all agreed that Prey was one of the strongest on the EP, and additionally, it kind of goes at 100 the whole time, so it's going to grab people's attentions. Like, I'm not going to put a ballad out for our first song because your average fan base is not going to be like, well, I'm sure that there's a reason for this ballad. I'm sure it's going to grow. They're going to be like, this is boring so far. But with the context of, there's no other songs out. So we made a decision to put out one of the more high energy songs first, and then kind of juxtapose with Doomsday, which is a slow burn, initially. And you'll get a lot more variety too. Like, we have almost like a pop song coming up on our EP.
Awesome.
We do have a ballad, which is actually my personal favorite song on the album that we'll be releasing. That's the one that honestly made me cry when I heard it finished. So yeah, there's a lot to come. That's
so exciting. I'm very excited. I'm excited to hear pop as well. I have a very wide range. I predominantly focus on alternative rock here, but on the channel, but yeah, you can't just listen to one thing. And like, Ariana Grande, I listen to a bunch. Her pipes are amazing. Most of the songs are bangers. Like, they're great. Yeah, that was great. But yeah, Prey was such a strong open. And I suppose if you did open with Doomsday as a first impression, people might go, oh, they're a ballad band, or, that's what they do. Whereas Prey had a range within it. And you could hear, there's a variety of vocals and a variety of sonic sounds, and it kind of hits, like, brilliantly whet the appetite, I would say. And my brother, who has a very similar taste in music to me, he messaged me when he first heard it and said, not since when we first heard Sleep Token back in 2018 has he been this excited about a new artist. And he, like, it's hard to please, I'd say. Sonic is like, yeah, it's all right. So high praise and deserved, I would say.
Yay, that makes me happy.
How did you manage to, for this first release, have the management set up and the rest? You said you have contacts or friends. Like, is that from the years of the previous deathcore symphonic band? How did you build your network to have such a polished release team, as it were?
Yeah. So actually, we didn't get management until recently. I was doing for our first release, I was kind of doing all the things, and I was so overwhelmed. You know,
Yeah.
it got to the point where we were starting to get label attention, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know what's happening, you know? And, you know, you have people telling you, like, that's like, hey, like, I've had friends tell me, like, this isn't going to happen to you because you're too new. Like, don't get ahead of yourself. And then things happen. They're like, oh, I hope you know this just doesn't happen to bands. So we've had such an incredibly unique upcoming. But I did know a lot of people in the industry beforehand. Not saying that, you know, anybody necessarily did me any favors, but what I mean by that is I listened to everything anybody in the industry had to say for advice. I left my ego out of it. I said, you know, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to take the advice of these people. And I'm going to run with it. And so far, that's done nothing but good things for me. I think the biggest weakness that I've had is just assuming that everybody is peachy keen and a good person to work with, and that nobody's like a predator. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And we've had some, you know, we've already worked with some people that could have gone really bad if I fully trusted them. So that's been growing pains as well. There's a lot of lessons that I've had to learn very quickly, which for an average band, usually you get to learn those over the years and not the weeks.
Right. Yes. It's unfortunate, but we're unlikely to come across just good humans all the time.
Yeah.
And certainly if you have something like this, which feels like a bit of a lightning in a bottle, you're going to have a lot of people going, oh, that's great. Oh, and they're new. Maybe I can somewhat make this work for me and my team and business, whatever it is. So,
maybe not even like an outright bad person, but they're just kind of like, oh, like this will provide for my family, you know, so I'm going to do it this way. You know, they have their own things that they're trying to accomplish. So
yeah. And even on a smaller degree, they're likely to want to put their own influence on it and spin and priorities. And it sounds very much that this is your core baby you want to nurture. So it's going to be more difficult to let anyone do that. Or the risk is it's going to become something that you did not originally intend. And that might be kind of tough, but it sounds like you've gone through some experience in the past that helped you kind of guard it for now, at the very least.
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest growing pain was just going from joining somebody else's band to owning a band. You know what I mean? Like that was such a change, you know, because I'm used to just kind of following the lead and doing what I'm told and providing my opinion, but most of the time knowing that if it doesn't get taken into account, it's not my band. And then I kind of had to turn around like, hey, this is my band and this is how things are going to go. Just girl bossing too hard. You know, I girl bossed too hard and now I'm the actual boss and it's actually really hard.
Yeah, especially logistically, the amount of stuff that goes around if you're the lead, you know, most active person in any given band, which every band has like one who's like pushing everything forward. Yeah. It is an absolute time sink and effort sink. And you've got NASA to worry about as well. They 100% do full-time jobs. Are you getting sleep at night? How are you managing or it's just like limiting the social leisure stuff around those two things for now is the way to survive?
Yeah, no, I protect my sleep. You know, like very rarely do I not get, 7 to 8 hours. But I guess to kind of put it in perspective, I wake up at 5 a.m. I work for a couple of hours. I walk my dog. I come back. I work. And then I work out. I work on music and I go to bed. There's no very seldomly am I able to sit down and watch TV or, read a book or my life is very much from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. very much already called for. So.
And is that in pursuit of one day I will eventually get to the point where I can find the balance because it will be established the way I want it to be established? Or is it, this is how I enjoy my time and being productive in life?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't think necessarily assuming that, that this band gets bigger, which, we will, I'm going to say it because it's but whatever that's called.
I have no doubt that's going to happen.
I'm an aquarium or something, astrology, but the band's only going to get busier. So I actually don't think that my lifestyle is sustainable at this point. So something would have to give at some point. Whether it be me, transitioning to music full time or, you know, something, maybe doing the NASA thing part-time. I don't know. But that's a very scary future. But my goal is always, I will always work for NASA like it's my only job until I, you know, am able to make enough money with music to quit, because my job is very unforgiving. Like, we have people in space. So like, I'm not going to half-ass that has consequences. So yeah, I don't know what my future is going to look like in the future. I don't know, but I'm really
Which
excited.
is exciting.
Yeah. But you know, and this is what I was talking about with sacrifices. I might have to make some huge sacrifices in the near future. I just don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah. Well, even just acknowledging that is speaks to the fact you've got a good head on your shoulders, and there's a practicality to this. And you realize, well, if this continues to go the way it will musically, it needs to scale, and you're already at max capacity. So you might need to, I guess, start trusting someone else to take some of that, I don't know, management-y stuff or control that you have, and yeah, be tricky. But yeah. Again, it sounds like so far the way things have been, so I guess, what is the word I've been looking for? Carefully looked after. I would be surprised if that doesn't continue under what you're doing so far. So
yeah.
Good start, certainly. Do you have a musical bucket list in future that you'd like, you know, certain festivals you want to play, or milestones you'd like to achieve with your music? Or again, is it a case of not worrying about musical future, what that looks like, just kind of go for what we're doing right now?
I mean, hopefully this doesn't come off like really cocky, but I believe like in this project so much to where I see us playing in festivals, doing, you know, decent sized tours with like, you know, bands that are in the millions of monthly listeners mark in the next 2 years. Like, I really believe in this project so much, where if it has the right people pushing it and I have the right team behind me, or next to me, I think that this band can get there very quickly.
Well, it certainly seems to be on the right trajectory from 2 songs. Like, it's wildly exciting. Certainly from a music appreciator like myself, it's very exciting musically, and cracking start. So coming up next then for yourselves? You got 3 songs coming out. Do you have a release schedule for those, say monthly, bi-weekly? I'm not sure what the gap for the first 2 songs was. Is that maintained?
Yeah, as much as I wish I could tell everybody what the schedule is right now, we're actually in talks with labels and whatnot right now. So, and that's about as much as I can share. But
sure. Yeah.
With that, you know, we do not plan on losing the momentum. You should expect another single soon. But I just can't tell you guys exactly when. Probably March-ish, April-ish time frame.
Okay, right. Because I would imagine if you, if you did end up with another,
there's a music video coming up too at some point.
Okay, right. Because the first 2 were visualizers.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Is that going to feature a church scene? Is that the photo shoot that was also maybe a music video? Oh, who knows? Who knows?
Maybe.
Yeah, cool. And currently, so it appears there's 3 members of the band. Officially, it would be yourself and the 2 other guys that are featuring. Is that the case? Just neither one of them is a drummer. Is that right?
Yeah, we don't have a drummer.
Okay, but there's real drums, unless someone's incredible on their computer. There's a real drummer on the records.
They're real drums. That god of a drummer is not in our band, but Max Sanza, he's fantastic. He is not in the band, but he recorded the drums on our EP. Right.
Yeah, they're gorgeous drums. I'm a drummer first and foremost, and the feel is fantastic. And even the snare sound, I'm like, the sounds like corn snare. It's really, really good stuff. So are you looking for a drummer full time, or is that down the road? Not currently, because that would be required by live bookings, let's say.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're looking for one. It would kind of have to be one of those things where a drummer comes to us that is really, really good because they have some big shoes to fill, obviously.
This is it. Yeah, the blueprint, what they need to play already is like, okay, it's good.
Yeah,
It's good stuff.
yeah, because Max is an animal. But they would have to be obviously good at their craft and provide something else to the team, whether it be creative input, graphic design, maybe some photography, maybe some just prior industry experience, and really understanding the vision of this band. So it would have to be a really good fit. So I guess we're not looking, but if it comes, I wouldn't say that we're, not taking any drummers for sure.
Right. But I suppose if you do rush it, you reduce the chance of finding the right fit.
Yes.
As a priority.
Which I've made that mistake before. Don't just hire people because you need people. It's a big mistake.
To finish here, is there anyone in the music scene, I don't know, vocally, musically, or band that you'd be interested, or if you could dream it, to collaborate with or feature on any of their records, or have them feature on Gore records in future?
That's a really good question. Because like I said, I don't listen to as much metal.
It doesn't have to be metal necessarily.
Oh man, this is really reaching for the stars. Like I'm an optimist, but this is really reaching for the stars. I love Victoria Monet. She is an incredible R&B artist. She writes like the coolest songs. She's actually helped Ariana Grande write some of her songs.
Oh wow.
But Spirit Box got to do a collab with Megan Thee Stallion, so you know what? Yeah. I'm reaching for them stars. So like if Victoria Monet ever, if you see this girl and you ever want to be on a metal song, just let me know, please.
That'd be dope. Yeah, I loved that collaboration with Megan Thee Stallion and Spirit Box. Not just because I thought the song was great. It reminded me of the older days of like Cypress Hill doing a rock superstar. Yeah. But also it's opening up metal to more people, and we're going to get more interesting, diverse like backgrounds and songwriting influences into metal, which can make it far more interesting and better, I think, as a result. So
yeah, metal's now cool. Like metal is cool.
Yeah. What a world. What a world.
Wow.
Well, and certainly the band Gore fits within that cool as fuck metal world. So it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you very, very much for your time. Best of luck with the next few songs coming out in this EP and with everything else that happens with after that. I'm so excited to hear that you're already working on the material for afterwards as well. Very, very cool. Thank you so much, and good luck with everything coming up.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Well, that was absolutely fascinating. It turns out this is the very first interview that the band Gore have done. So it's a really rare glimpse into the kind of behind the scenes of this band starting out on their journey. And what a start it has been, clearly. Onwards and upwards, and I see very great things happening for this group. And if you want to keep in touch with them in future, I've added the social media platform links for all their bits and bobs in the description of this episode. And if you'd like to chat to me about the interview, this podcast, or recommend some artists that you think I should interview in future, there's a free Discord server you can join. That link is also in the description. So thank you for watching or listening, and hopefully I'll see you again at a future episode.